The crab cake was cold. Josie Contreras stared at the tiny, gold-encrusted circle on her paper plate and wondered if this was what her life had become, standing alone at a tech gala in borrowed heels, mourning the temperature of free food. 6 months ago, she'd been a rising marketing director at Vance Digital. She'd had a corner office with a view of the Austin skyline. She'd had a team of 12 who actually listened when she spoke. She'd had a campaign that went viral, 17 million impressions in 48 hours, the kind of numbers that made executives weep with joy. Now, she had a cold crab cake and shoes that were already cutting into her ankles. "You're not eating that," a voice said from behind her. Josie turned to find her best friend Mina Park standing there, arms crossed, one perfectly sculpted eyebrow raised in judgment. Mina looked like she belonged here. Sleek black dress, hair swept up in an effortless twist, the kind of confident posture that said, "I run things," without ever having to say it out loud. Which made sense, because Mina did run things. Specifically, she ran events. This event, the Founders and Futures Gala, Austin's annual celebration of tech money and inflated egos, currently taking place in a converted airplane hangar that had been transformed into something out of a science fiction movie. "I might eat it," Josie said defensively. "It's protein. It's been sitting under a heat lamp for 40 minutes. I watched them put it out." Mina plucked the plate from Josie's hands and deposited it on a passing server's tray with the practiced ease of someone who had been doing this for years. "Come on, there are fresh ones at the station by the bar." "I don't want to go to the bar." "Why not?" "Because the bar is in the middle of the room, and the middle of the room is where all the people are." Mina's expression softened slightly. "Just slightly." "Joe, don't Joe me." Josie wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of how the borrowed dress pulled at her hips, how the sequins caught the light in a way that felt more disco ball than elegant. "I told you I wasn't ready for this. And I told you that hiding in your apartment eating cereal for dinner isn't a recovery plan. It's not cereal. Sometimes it's ramen." "Josie." "Fine. Sometimes it's cereal and ramen. Together, in the same bowl." Mina closed her eyes for a moment, as if summoning patience from some deep internal reserve. When she opened them again, her voice was gentler. "Look, I know the last 6 months have been hell. I know Marcus screwed you over. I know the whole thing was unfair and wrong. And if I ever see that man again, I will personally, Mina, shove a USB drive so far up his, Mina." Her friend took a breath. "The point is, you can't let what happened define you. You're talented. You're brilliant. And right now, there are about 300 people in this room who could change your life if you just talk to them." Josie glanced around the hangar. Mina wasn't wrong about the people. They were everywhere. Clusters of suits and designer sneakers, women in minimalist gowns that probably cost more than Josie's rent, everyone holding champagne flutes and talking with the kind of animated hand gestures that suggested they were either discussing revolutionary technology or their latest ayahuasca retreat. "Probably both. I don't know how to do this anymore," Josie admitted quietly. "The networking, the small talk, the pretending like I'm not one bad month away from moving back in with my mom." "You're not going to move back in with your mom. She's already cleared out the guest room. She sent me pictures." Mina winced. "Okay, that's concerning, but also motivation. Use it." She grabbed Josie's shoulders, turning her to face the crowd. "Look, all you have to do is survive 2 hours. Smile, nod, hand out a few business cards." "I don't have business cards." "I made you some." Mina produced a small stack from seemingly nowhere, pressing them into Josie's palm. Josie looked down at them. "Josie Contreras, brand strategy and communications. Freelance. When did you?" "This morning, while you were still in bed." "You're welcome." Mina patted her cheek. "Now, I have to go deal with a keynote speaker who just informed me he's allergic to something called electromagnetic frequencies, which I'm pretty sure isn't a real thing. But I'll be back in an hour. Maybe less." "Don't leave." "Mina, don't leave Josie." Her friend was already walking away, heels clicking against the polished concrete floor. She called over her shoulder, "And eat an actual crab cake. The fresh ones have dill." And then she was gone, swallowed by the crowd, leaving Josie alone with a stack of business cards she hadn't asked for, and a growing urge to find the nearest exit. The hangar was enormous, easily the size of a football field, and every inch of it had been transformed for the occasion. The industrial bones of the space remained visible: exposed steel beams, massive rolling doors, the faded outline of where aircraft used to park. But everything else was sleek and modern. Hanging installations of twisted metal and fiber optics cast fractured light across the floor. A DJ booth in the corner pulsed with ambient electronic music, the kind of soundtrack that suggested innovation without ever becoming loud enough to interrupt conversation. Bars stationed at cardinal points offered craft cocktails with names like The Disruptor and Series B Fizz. It was, objectively, a beautiful space. It was also, subjectively, Josie's personal nightmare. She started moving, not toward the bar but away from it, threading through conversations she didn't want to join, past people who looked at her borrowed dress and immediately looked away. She kept her head down, her shoulders hunched, making herself small. This was a mistake. She knew it had been a mistake the moment Mina had shown up at her apartment 3 hours ago, garment bag in hand, refusing to take no for an answer. "You need to get out," Mina had said. "It's been 6 months. 6 months isn't that long. You've watched The Office all the way through 4 times. It's comfort viewing. You've started talking back to the characters. Everyone does that. You corrected Dwight's beat farming techniques." Out loud, with citations. She'd had a point. Josie could admit that now, standing in the middle of a gala she had no business attending, wearing a dress that belonged to Mina's sister-in-law and shoes that were already forming blisters on both heels. She had, perhaps, retreated a bit too far into her cocoon. But retreating felt safe. Retreating felt smart. Because the last time Josie had put herself out there, the last time she'd trusted someone with her work and her ideas and her future, no, she wasn't going to think about that. Not tonight. She found a corner, a blessed, beautiful corner near one of the massive windows that overlooked the parking lot. It wasn't exactly a view, just rows of Teslas and the occasional Porsche. But it was away from the crowd, and that was all that mattered. Josie leaned against the window frame and let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. 2 hours. She could survive 2 hours. She pulled out her phone, checking for messages out of habit. Nothing important. A text from her mom asking if she'd gotten the pictures of the guest room. So much natural light. As a LinkedIn notification that made her stomach clench. She didn't open it. Probably another person she used to work with, posting about their promotion or their new venture, or their amazing, successful life that hadn't imploded because their boss was a narcissistic credit-stealing snake. She put the phone away. From her corner, she could watch the gala like a nature documentary. There was the cluster of venture capitalists by the bar, recognizable by their identical Patagonia vests and intense eye contact. There was the group of startup founders near the stage, practicing their networking like it was an Olympic sport. There was the tech journalist making rounds, her recorder held discreetly at her side, collecting quotes for whatever piece she was writing. And there, at the center of it all, was a woman in a silver dress who seemed to be holding court. Josie watched her for a moment, curious despite herself. The woman was beautiful, the kind of beautiful that came from expensive skincare and personal trainers, and a bone structure that photographers probably loved. Blonde hair swept into something architectural, a laugh that carried across the room, bright and practiced. She was talking to a man. Actually, she was touching a man, her hand on his arm, her body angled toward his in a way that suggested intimacy. The man was tall, dark-haired, wearing a suit that even Josie could tell was expensive. His posture was rigid, his smile tight. He looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. Josie found herself oddly fascinated. In this room, full of people trying desperately to be seen, here was someone who was clearly trying to disappear. She knew that feeling. She was living that feeling. A server passed by with a tray of champagne. Josie grabbed a glass, her first of the night, and took a long sip. The bubbles burned pleasantly. She wasn't much of a drinker, but she figured she'd earned this. She checked her watch. 1 hour and 45 minutes to go. Maybe she'd find those fresh crab cakes after all. 45 minutes later, Josie had successfully acquired 2 crab cakes. Mina was right. The dill made all the difference. Avoided 3 separate conversations, and found an even better hiding spot. A small alcove near the service entrance where catering staff kept appearing and disappearing with fresh trays. She'd also learned, through shameless eavesdropping, that the woman in silver was named Sloane Ashford. The name rang a bell somewhere in the back of Josie's mind. She was pretty sure she'd seen it in a business headline once. Something about clean energy or sustainable whatever. The kind of story that sounded impressive, but that Josie had scrolled past without reading. What she was learning now, from the 2 servers gossiping next to a stack of empty trays, was far more interesting. Dated for like 2 years, one of them was saying. She dumped him right before the Forbes profile came out. My friend works at the magazine, said the whole thing was incredibly awkward. And now she wants him back. The other server sounded skeptical. Apparently, my friend said she's been showing up at all his events for months. Very were still friends energy, but like, aggressively friendly. If that makes sense. Girl, that makes perfect sense. I've been that aggressively friendly. Same. Josie shouldn't have been listening. She knew she shouldn't have been listening. But the alternative was joining the actual party, and that seemed significantly worse. She glanced toward the main floor, trying to spot the man from before, the one Sloane Ashford had been claiming. She found him near the stage, deep in conversation with an older man in a senator's pin. His body language had shifted from earlier. He looked more engaged now, more present. Whatever they were discussing, it seemed to actually interest him. Then Sloane appeared at his elbow. Even from across the room, Josie could see how he stiffened. The way his jaw tightened, the almost imperceptible step backward that Sloane countered by stepping forward. It was like watching a dance that only one person knew the steps to. Josie felt a pang of something unexpected, sympathy, recognition. She knew what it felt like to be trapped in a conversation you couldn't escape, to smile and nod while someone else controlled the narrative. She drained the rest of her champagne. You're really committed to this corner, huh? Josie startled, nearly dropping her empty glass. She turned to find a woman standing beside her, early 30s, red hair, sharp eyes behind cat-eye glasses. She was holding 2 flutes of champagne and extending one toward Josie. I wasn't, Josie fumbled for words. You've been standing here for almost an hour. The woman's tone was amused, not unkind. I've made 3 full circuits of the room. Each time I pass, here you are. Watching. I'm not watching. I'm observing. What's the difference? Watching implies interest. Observing is scientific. The woman laughed, a real laugh, not the practiced ones Josie had been hearing all night. I like that. Mind if I observe with you? Josie hesitated, then took the offered champagne. Free country. Debatable but sure. The woman leaned against the wall beside her, surveying the room with the same detached interest Josie had been cultivating. I'm Vera, by the way. Vera Chen. I run the tech desk at the Austin Chronicle. A journalist. That explained the observing. Josie Contreras. I'm between things. Vera raised an eyebrow. That's a diplomatic way of putting it. I've had practice. Fair enough. Vera took a sip of her champagne, then nodded toward the main floor. You've been watching Caleb Morrow. Any particular reason? Josie blinked. Who? Caleb Morrow. Vera pointed her glass toward the man near the stage, the one still being orbited by Sloane Ashford, founder and CEO of Meridian Logistics. Just landed a massive government contract for sustainable supply chain management. Very hot in green tech circles right now. I wasn't watching him specifically. You sure? Because from my 3 circuits it seems like I was watching her, Josie admitted. The woman in silver. I was trying to figure out their deal. The Vera's expression shifted into something knowing. Sloane Ashford. She and Caleb were engaged about 2 years ago. Big society thing. Very pretty announcement in the journal. Then she broke it off, very publicly, about 8 months before he landed the contract. She dumped him. Apparently, he wasn't media-friendly enough. Those were the exact words, according to my sources. She wanted someone who'd do more interviews, more photo ops. He wanted to run his company in peace. Josie frowned, so she dumped him for being private. Private doesn't play well on Instagram. Sloane's whole brand is visibility. She's got her own startup, smaller than Meridian but well-connected. She builds her profile through association. Vera shrugged. Now that Caleb's about to be a very big deal, she's suddenly reconsidering her position. That's Josie searched for the right word. Calculating. Welcome to Austin Tech. Vera finished her champagne. I should keep circulating. But it was nice observing with you, Josie, between things. You too, Vera Chen. The journalist disappeared into the crowd, leaving Josie alone again. But this time with new information rattling around in her head. She looked back at Caleb Morrow. He'd extracted himself from Sloane somehow, at least temporarily. He was standing by one of the bars now, alone for the first time since Josie had started. Observing. His posture was different when no one was touching him, looser, more natural. He was nursing what looked like whiskey, watching the room with an expression that Josie recognized intimately. The expression of someone who wanted to leave but couldn't. She should look away. She knew she should look away. This man wasn't her business, and staring at strangers was weird. And she had 45 minutes left to survive before she could disappear back into her apartment and forget this whole night ever happened. But then something shifted. Caleb Morrow turned his head, scanning the room, and for one terrible, wonderful, impossible moment, his eyes met hers. Josie's breath caught. He didn't look away. That was the thing. He should have looked away. Everyone else did. But Caleb Morrow held her gaze across 50 feet of crowded hangar, and something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or just shared misery. Then Sloane Ashford appeared at his side again, and the moment shattered. Josie turned away quickly, heart hammering. Her face felt hot. She pressed her cool champagne glass against her cheek and tried to remember how to breathe normally. That was nothing. That was absolutely nothing. Rich men didn't look at women like her across crowded rooms. That was movie stuff, fantasy stuff, the kind of thing that happened in books, not in real life. Not to unemployed marketing consultants in borrowed dresses. She checked her phone. 38 minutes left. She could do this. She could absolutely do this. She just wouldn't look at him again. Caleb Morrow was having the worst night of his year, which was saying something, because his year had included a hostile takeover attempt, a supply chain crisis that nearly bankrupted 3 partner companies, and one truly spectacular incident involving a rogue email that accidentally CC'd an entire board meeting to a massage parlor in Tampa. But tonight was worse. Really should consider it, Sloane was saying, her voice that particular blend of honey and steel that he'd once found attractive, and now made his skin crawl. The interview would be great for both of us. Joint profile, power couple angle. Marcus at the Journal has been asking for months. We're not a couple, Caleb said flatly. Not yet. Sloane smiled, and it was beautiful, and it was terrifying. But perceptions matter, don't they? You should know that better than anyone. After all, you're about to sign the biggest government contract in your company's history. Having a stable, supportive partner by your side. That's the kind of thing that plays well in Senate hearings. She wasn't wrong. That was the infuriating part. She wasn't wrong, and they both knew it. The government contract, $2.3 billion over 5 years to overhaul federal supply chain logistics with Meridian's sustainable infrastructure, had been his white whale for 3 years. He'd fought for it, sacrificed for it, reshaped his entire company around the possibility of it, and now it was finally happening. The Secretary of Transportation was here tonight. The final signature was scheduled for next week. All he had to do was not screw it up. Sloane touched his arm again. We don't have to announce anything official. Just be seen together. Let the speculation do the work. The speculation is that we're getting back together. We're not. Are you sure about that? He was. He was absolutely, completely, 100% sure. But the problem with Sloane was that she didn't accept certainty. She treated his rejections like negotiations, his boundaries like challenges. Every no was just a not yet in her mind. And the press loved it. In the 8 months since she'd broken off their engagement, publicly, dramatically, in a way that painted him as the emotionally unavailable workaholic who'd driven away the love of his life, Sloane had built an entire narrative around their relationship. She showed up at his events. She gave quotes to reporters about where things stand that always sounded hopeful. She'd even posted a photo of them from 2 years ago on her Instagram last month, captioned "Some things are worth waiting for." Caleb hadn't commented. He never commented, but that just fed the story. Mysterious billionaire, playing hard to get, surely destined to reunite with his beautiful ex. It made him sick. "I need another drink," he said, extracting his arm from her grip with more force than was probably polite. "I'll come with you." "No," he didn't bother softening it. "I'd like a minute alone, Sloane." Something flickered in her eyes, irritation, calculation, but her smile never wavered. "Of course, I'll find you later." Not a question, a promise, a threat. He walked away before he could say something he'd regret. The bar was crowded, but people parted for him. They always did. It was one of the stranger side effects of money. The way crowds reorganized themselves around your presence. The way conversations paused when you approached. He'd never gotten used to it, even after all these years. He still expected to have to push, to wait his turn, to be treated like just another person. But he wasn't just another person. Not anymore. Not since Meridian had gone from a startup in his garage to a company that employed 3,000 people and was about to reshape federal infrastructure. Sometimes he missed the garage. "Whiskey," he told the bartender. "Neat." While he waited, he let his eyes wander the room. He wasn't looking for anyone in particular. Wasn't looking for the woman in the corner who'd been watching him earlier, the one with dark hair and borrowed shoes, and an expression of profound discomfort that he'd recognized immediately. He definitely wasn't looking for her, but his eyes found her anyway. She was still there, still in her corner, still holding onto her champagne like a lifeline. She'd been joined by someone briefly, a redhead he vaguely recognized as a local journalist. But now she was alone again, and she was very carefully not looking in his direction, which meant she'd noticed him looking. "Interesting. Your whiskey, Mr. Morrow." He took the glass without looking away from the woman. She was pretty in an unconventional way, not polished like the women he usually met at these things, not trying to be seen. Actually, she seemed to be actively trying to disappear, which was so unusual in this crowd that it was almost refreshing. "Caleb." He closed his eyes briefly before turning. Senator Morrison was approaching, his wife on his arm, his smile broad and political. "Senator, Mrs. Morrison, lovely to see you." The next 20 minutes were a blur of handshakes and small talk and carefully neutral statements about the contract and the economy and the importance of sustainable infrastructure. Caleb had given this speech 1,000 times. He could do it in his sleep, but the whole time, some part of his mind kept drifting back to the corner, to the woman who didn't belong there, to the strange moment when their eyes had met and he'd felt, for the first time all night, like someone actually saw him. Ridiculous. He was being ridiculous. He was a 35-year-old CEO in the middle of the biggest deal of his career, and he was distracted by a stranger at a party. "So we're very excited about the possibilities," Senator Morrison was saying. "The committee is fully behind this, you know. Bipartisan support, which is rare these days. I appreciate that, Senator. And we appreciate what Meridian is doing. This country needs innovation. Leadership." The senator's eyes crinkled. Stability. There it was. The word that had been following Caleb around for months, whispered in boardrooms and printed in op-eds. Stability, as if a man couldn't run a successful company unless he had a wife at home. As if his relationship status had anything to do with his ability to revolutionize supply chain logistics. Meridian is very stable, Caleb said carefully. Of course, of course. The senator nodded toward where Sloane was holding court on the other side of the room. I was pleased to see Miss Ashford here tonight. Lovely woman. Her father and I go way back, you know. Caleb felt his jaw tighten. I'm aware. Rumor has it you two might be working things out. The rumors are incorrect. Senator Morrison's smile didn't falter, but something shifted in his expression. Well, these things take time, don't they? No need to rush. He clapped Caleb on the shoulder. We'll talk more next week. Looking forward to the signing. He walked away with his wife, leaving Caleb alone with his whiskey and a growing sense of dread. The message had been clear, subtle but clear. The senator liked Sloane. The senator liked the story of Caleb and Sloane reuniting, and the senator's support was crucial to the contract going through. This was the game. This had always been the game. Perceptions, narratives, the careful construction of an image that made powerful people comfortable. Caleb hated it. He'd always hated it, but he'd played it, because that was what success required. He just hadn't expected to be playing it with his personal life. His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant, reporter from TechCrunch asking about reconciliation with SA. Standard no comment. He typed back, yes. Another buzz. She's persistent. Might run speculation piece anyway. Of course she was. Of course she would. He finished his whiskey and set the glass on a passing tray with more force than necessary. He needed air. He needed space. He needed 5 minutes where no one was watching him, analyzing him, trying to fit him into a narrative he'd never agreed to. His eyes drifted back to the corner. The woman was still there, still alone, still determinedly ignoring the party happening around her. She looked exactly how he felt. Before he could talk himself out of it, Caleb started walking. Josie saw him coming, and her first instinct was to run. Not walk. Run. Out the service entrance, through the parking lot, all the way back to her apartment where she could pretend this night had never happened. And she definitely never made eye contact with a billionaire across a crowded room like the protagonist of a bad romance novel. But her feet wouldn't move. He was closer now. 20 feet. 15. She could see details. The precise tailoring of his charcoal suit, the slight shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his dark hair was just slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it in frustration. 10 feet. 5. He stopped beside her, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Josie became acutely aware of everything wrong with her appearance. The dress that wasn't hers and didn't quite fit. The shoes that had definitely given her blisters. The champagne glass she was clutching like a weapon. The fact that she probably had lipstick on her teeth, and her hair was doing that thing where it frizzed around her temples. Hi, Caleb Morrow said. His voice was different up close. Lower, slightly rough around the edges, like he'd been talking too much tonight. Or maybe not enough. Hi, Josie managed. Silence stretched between them. In the distance, someone laughed. The music shifted to something with a faster tempo. A server walked by with a tray of miniature desserts that Josie would normally have lunged for. She didn't move. I'm Caleb, he said. I know who you are. A flicker of surprise in his eyes. Most people probably pretended not to recognize him. Josie had never been good at pretending. Okay, he said slowly. Then you have me at a disadvantage. Josie Contreras. She didn't offer her hand. She was still holding the champagne glass like it might save her life. And I'm not stalking you, if that's what you're wondering. I was just standing here. This is a public corner. I wasn't wondering. Good, because I wasn't. Noted. More silence. This was painful. This was genuinely, physically painful. Josie had spent her entire career being good at conversation, being smooth and professional and charming. And now she was standing in front of the most intimidating man in the room, making sounds with her mouth that barely qualified as words. Caleb glanced back over his shoulder. Josie followed his gaze and saw Sloane Ashford watching them from across the room, her expression impossible to read at this distance. "Friend of yours?" Josie asked before she could stop herself. Caleb turned back to her. Something shifted in his expression, a crack in the controlled mask he'd been wearing all night. "No," he said quietly. "Not exactly." Josie waited for him to elaborate. He didn't. "So," she said, filling the awkward silence, "did you need something? Or did you just come over here to share my corner?" "I came over here because you looked like the only person at this party who wanted to be here less than I do." Josie blinked. "That's actually accurate." "I know." He almost smiled. "Almost. I've been watching. You've been hiding in corners all night." "I haven't been hiding. I've been strategically positioning myself. In every corner, except the ones with people. People are overrated. At events like this." "Absolutely." Josie found herself relaxing just slightly. He was easier to talk to than she'd expected. Less intimidating up close. More human. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "You can ask. Why did you come over here?" "Really? Because I've been observing this party for 2 hours, and rich people don't usually cross rooms to talk to." She gestured at herself. "Whatever this is." Caleb studied her for a moment. His eyes were dark blue, she realized. The kind of blue that probably photographed well. The kind of blue that probably got him whatever he wanted. "I came over here," he said slowly, "because I need you to do something insane." Josie's champagne sloshed. "Excuse me. I need you to pretend you're with me. Just for tonight." She stared at him. "There's someone here I need to avoid," he continued, his voice dropping even lower. "She's been creating a narrative that I can't seem to shut down, and every time I try to distance myself, it makes things worse. But if I'm seen with someone else, someone she doesn't know, someone who isn't part of this world, hold on." Josie held up her free hand. "Are you asking me to be your fake girlfriend? At a tech gala? Because you can't just tell a woman to leave you alone. It's more complicated than that." "Is it, though?" Josie felt something sparking in her chest. Irritation, maybe, or disbelief, or the kind of indignant incredulity that came from a life spent watching powerful people dodge problems that regular humans would have solved with a single conversation. "Because from where I'm standing, it seems like you could just say, 'I'm not interested,' and walk away. You seem like the walking away type." Caleb's jaw tightened. The woman in question is Sloane Ashford. Her father is Senator William Ashford, chair of the Commerce Committee. I'm about to sign a $2 billion contract that requires his support. Every time I deny that we're reconciling, she reframes it to the press. Every time I avoid her, she shows up somewhere else. My denials have become the story. The only way to kill the story is to replace it with a fake relationship, with the appearance of something else, yes." Josie let out a laugh. It wasn't a kind laugh. "So you, a grown man, apparently successful, with access to lawyers and publicists and probably an entire PR department, need a complete stranger to pretend to be your girlfriend because you can't handle an insistent socialite. When you put it like that, it sounds ridiculous." "It sounds desperate," Caleb corrected. "Which is accurate. I am desperate." He said it flatly, without self-pity, like he was stating a fact. "The contract signing is next week. If there's another round of headlines about Sloane and me, if the senator decides I'm too messy, too unstable, too dramatic to be a reliable partner, then your deal falls through. Then 3 years of work falls through. 3,000 jobs. A chance to actually make federal logistics sustainable instead of the disaster it currently is." He met her eyes. "I'm not asking because I think this is a good idea. I'm asking because I've run out of better ones." Josie stared at him. She should say no. Obviously, she should say no. This was insane, genuinely, certifiably insane. She wasn't the kind of person who pretended to date billionaires at fancy parties. She wasn't the kind of person who got involved in complicated schemes to manipulate the press. She was the kind of person who ate cereal for dinner and watched The Office on repeat and was currently, despite all evidence to the contrary, trying to rebuild her life through legitimate means. But, but, what would I have to do? She heard herself ask. Something flickered in Caleb's expression. Hope. Relief. Just be seen with me. Dance with me once. Let me introduce you to a few people. Make it look like we're together. And what do I tell them? When they ask who I am, whatever you want, make something up, or tell the truth, I don't care. The truth is that I'm unemployed and living off freelance gigs that barely cover rent. Caleb didn't flinch. Then tell them you're between opportunities. Everyone at these things is between something. That's disturbingly accurate. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I can compensate you. For your time. Compensate me how? Josie narrowed her eyes. Are you going to give me a gift card? A fruit basket? A pony? I was thinking something more useful. Like, Caleb paused, considering. What do you do? For work, when you're not between things. Josie hesitated. This felt like a trap, revealing her professional history to someone who could probably find it all with a single Google search anyway. But there was something in his expression that seemed genuinely curious. Marketing, she said finally. Brand strategy. Communications. I was a director at Vance Digital until. She stopped. Until I wasn't. She took a breath. My boss stole a campaign I created, took credit for it when it went viral, then blamed me when the follow-up flopped. I got publicly scapegoated. My name's been mud in the industry ever since. Caleb's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. That, he said quietly, sounds like a situation where perceptions mattered more than truth. Yeah, it did. Josie swallowed. So when I say I understand the narrative thing, the story thing, I'm not being theoretical. I've been on the wrong end of it. They stood there for a moment, something unspoken passing between them. Two people who'd been chewed up by stories they hadn't authored. I could introduce you to people, Caleb said finally. Real introductions. People who hire consultants, who fund marketing campaigns, who run companies that might need exactly what you do. Not fake real. Connections that could actually help you. You're saying you'd pay me in networking. I'm saying I'd pay you in opportunities. The kind that don't usually come to people in borrowed dresses, standing in corners. Josie's face heated. You notice that. I notice most things. He didn't say it smugly, just matter-of-factly. Is that a yes? She should say no. She knew she should say no. It's a tell me more, she said instead. What exactly would this fake relationship look like? They moved to a quieter alcove near the back of the hangar, a small nook between two massive potted plants that someone had inexplicably decorated with twinkle lights. It was the kind of space that was probably meant for intimate conversations, which made Josie feel slightly hysterical about the fact that she was using it to negotiate terms with a billionaire about a fake relationship. Her life had taken a turn. Okay, she said, setting her champagne glass on a nearby ledge and crossing her arms. Walk me through this. What exactly do you need me to do? Caleb leaned against the opposite wall, creating a careful distance between them. Up close, in the soft glow of the twinkle lights, he looked. Tired, the kind of tired that came from more than just one long night. Tonight, he said, I need you to be seen with me. We'll dance. I'll introduce you to a few key people, Senator Morrison, a couple of board members, the TechCrunch reporter who's been circling. You don't have to say anything specific about our relationship. Just let the implication exist. The implication being that we're together. The implication being that Sloane's narrative is incorrect. And tomorrow, next week, when people start asking follow-up questions, Caleb was quiet for a moment. I haven't thought that far ahead. You haven't, Josie laughed incredulously. You're asking me to lie to an entire room full of powerful people, and you don't have a plan for what happens after tonight. I'm asking you to create an impression. Impressions don't require follow-up. Everything requires follow-up. That's literally how stories work. Someone will write about this. Someone will tweet about it. Someone will ask you, on camera, who the mystery woman was. And then what? Caleb's jaw tightened. Then I handle it. How? By saying we're keeping things private. By declining to comment. By being the kind of boring that doesn't generate clicks. And what about me? Josie pressed. When my name ends up in some gossip column, and it will, you know it will, what happens to my reputation? My career. The career I'm desperately trying to rebuild. Your name doesn't have to come up. Of course it does. You said you'd introduce me to people. Real introductions. That means using my real name. That means being findable. She shook her head. You can't have it both ways. Either I'm a phantom mystery woman with no identity, or I'm Josie Contreras, legitimate professional, but I can't be both. Caleb studied her for a long moment. You're very good at this. At what? At seeing the angles, the problems I hadn't considered. Yeah, well. Josie uncrossed her arms, suddenly feeling exposed. I've been a problem for a while now. Makes you good at spotting them. Something softened in his expression. Not pity, she would have hated pity, but something closer to recognition. What if we adjusted the terms? He said slowly. I'm listening. What if you weren't my girlfriend tonight? What if you were something else? Like what? Your cousin. Your lawyer. My consultant. He said it like the idea was forming in real time. You said you do brand strategy. Communications. What if, instead of a fake girlfriend, you were a real hire? Someone I'm working with on Meridian's relaunch. Someone with legitimate professional credentials, who happens to be here tonight because we're in discussions about a potential contract. Josie stared at him. You want to fake a business relationship instead of a romantic one. I want to make it real, or at least real enough to be true. But we're not in discussions about anything. We just met 15 minutes ago. 15 minutes ago, I offered you compensation in exchange for a service. You countered with concerns about your reputation. We're currently negotiating terms. He raised an eyebrow. Sounds like a discussion to me. Josie opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, then opened it again. That's... She searched for the right word. Actually kind of brilliant. Thank you. I didn't say I was complimenting you. And yet, she bit back a smile. There was something almost playful in his expression now. A dry wit hiding under all that control. It was disorienting. She'd expected cold. She hadn't expected this. Okay, she said. Let's say I agree to this. The professional angle. What does that actually look like tonight? I introduce you as someone I'm considering for a brand strategy role. You talk about your background, your expertise. Nothing fake, nothing invented, just a repositioning of the truth. And when people ask about us, personally, I tell them you're the most interesting person I've talked to at this party. Which is true. He held her gaze. I tell them I'm hoping to work with you. Also true. I tell them anything beyond that is none of their business. True again. And Sloane. Sloane will see me engaged in conversation with someone else. Someone she doesn't know. Someone she can't categorize. Someone who clearly has my full attention. He paused. That, more than anything, will change her calculation. Because you'll have options. Because the narrative shifts. I'm no longer the lonely billionaire waiting for his ex to come back. I'm someone who's moved on, who's focused on work, who has people in his life she doesn't control. Josie considered this. It was manipulative. There was no getting around that. But it was also, in its way, honest. She wasn't lying about who she was. She wasn't pretending to be something she wasn't. She was just allowing an impression to form. An impression that might help her. What about the introductions? She asked. The real ones. The people who might actually hire me. After we dance, I'll take you around the room. Senator Morrison, yes, but also Rebecca Park. She runs a clean energy PR firm that's been looking for a new strategist. Tom Chen, who manages communications for 3 Fortune 500 companies. Diana Vega, who just launched a sustainability-focused venture fund and is building a team. Names, real names, people who could actually change her life. And you'll vouch for me. Josie pressed. Even though you just met me. I'll vouch for your intelligence, your honesty, and your ability to see through bullshit." Caleb's voice was steady, which, based on this conversation, I can do with complete confidence. Josie felt something shift in her chest. It wasn't trust, not yet, but something adjacent to it. Possibility, maybe. The first flicker of possibility she'd felt in 6 months. "One night," she said. "One night. And if this blows up in my face, if someone decides I'm a gold digger or a opportunist or whatever story they want to tell, then I will personally, publicly, correct the record. With specifics, with details, with whatever it takes to protect your reputation." His eyes held hers. "You're doing me a favor, Josie. The least I can do is make sure it doesn't cost you." She believed him. That was the strangest part. She barely knew this man, and she believed him. Maybe it was the way he said her name, like it was something that mattered. Maybe it was the tired honesty in his eyes, the admission of desperation that most powerful men would never make. Maybe it was the fact that, for the first time in 6 months, someone was looking at her like she had something to offer. "Okay," she said. Caleb blinked. "Okay. One night. I'll be your professional connection. You introduce me to people who might actually hire me. We let the impression do its work." She took a breath. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "First, you don't touch me without permission. I don't care what looks believable. I get to decide what I'm comfortable with." "Done." "Second, if anyone asks me a direct question about my relationship with you, I answer honestly. I won't lie. I'll deflect, I'll redirect, but I won't lie." "Reasonable." "Third, tomorrow morning we never have to do this again. No follow-up obligations. No ongoing arrangement. One night, and then we go back to being strangers." Something flickered in Caleb's expression, disappointment. No, she was imagining it. "Agreed," he said. "Anything else?" Josie thought for a moment. "Fourth, when we're done here tonight, you buy me real food. Not canapes, not crab cakes. Actual food. From a restaurant. With a menu." The corner of his mouth twitched. "A fourth condition is food. I stress eat. And I've been stress-starving at this party for 3 hours. Those are my terms." For the first time all night, Caleb Morrow genuinely smiled. It transformed his face, softened the hard edges, lit something warm in his eyes. For a second, Josie forgot how to breathe. "Deal," he said, and extended his hand. She took it. His grip was firm and warm, and he held on for just a moment longer than strictly necessary. "Well then, Miss Contreras." He released her hand and offered his arm. "Shall we go change some narratives?" Josie looked at his arm, looked at the party waiting beyond their twinkle-lit alcove, looked at the future that might be about to shift in ways she couldn't predict. "Lead the way," she said, and let herself be seen. The moment they stepped out of the alcove, Josie felt the room shift. It was subtle at first. A head turning, a pause in conversation, eyes tracking their movement across the floor. She was suddenly, acutely aware of Caleb's arm under her hand, the warmth of him beside her, the way people parted to let them through like water around a stone. This was what it felt like to be seen. Not the way she'd been seen for the last 6 months, as a failure, a cautionary tale, someone to be avoided, but seen as someone who mattered, someone who belonged next to Caleb Morrow. It was intoxicating. It was terrifying. It was completely fake. "You okay?" Caleb asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. "Fine," Josie lied. "Just recalibrating." "Recalibrating what?" "My expectations for the evening." They didn't include walking through a room on the arm of a billionaire. For what it's worth, my expectations didn't include this either. They reached the edge of the main floor, where a cluster of people stood in conversation. Josie recognized Senator Morrison from earlier, his wife beside him, along with a woman in a severe black dress, and a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a TED talk. "Ready?" Caleb asked. "No." "Good. Neither am I." And then they were joining the group, and Caleb was making introductions, and Josie was smiling and nodding and saying words that somehow made sense even though her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. "Josie Contreras," Caleb was saying. She's been consulting on brand strategy for Meridian. I'm trying to convince her to come on board full-time. Really? Senator Morrison's eyes sparkled with interest. And what's your background, Miss Contreras? This was it, the moment where everything could fall apart. I was most recently a director at Vance Digital, Josie said, her voice steadier than she felt. Before that, I spent 5 years building communication strategies for mid-sized tech companies. My specialty is making complex innovations accessible to mainstream audiences, translating what companies do into why it matters. She didn't mention the scapegoating, didn't mention the unemployment, didn't mention the 6 months of ice cream and Netflix. She just presented the truth selectively, like everyone else at this party. Vance Digital, the woman in black said. I know that name. Weren't they behind that viral green energy campaign last year? The one with the animated whales. Josie's stomach clenched. That campaign, her campaign, the one Marcus had stolen. Yes, she said carefully. I led the creative development on that project. Brilliant work. The integration of climate data with emotional storytelling was remarkable. The woman extended her hand. Rebecca Park. I run a PR firm focused on sustainability messaging. We should talk. Josie shook her hand, feeling something warm bloom in her chest. I'd like that. The conversation continued. People asked questions, and Josie answered them. People made comments, and Josie responded with things that sounded intelligent. At some point, someone handed her a glass of champagne, and she sipped it without really tasting it. She was doing this. She was actually doing this. And then a new voice joined the group. Caleb, I didn't know you had a +1 tonight. Josie didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The silk-over-glass tone was unmistakable. Sloane Ashford had arrived. She was even more stunning up close. All sharp cheekbones and perfect posture, and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her silver dress caught the light like armor. Her gaze swept over Josie with the precision of a surgeon. Sloane, Caleb's arm tensed under Josie's hand. I didn't know you were coming over. How could I not? You've been monopolizing the most interesting person at the party. Sloane's smile widened. Hello, I'm Sloane Ashford, Josie Contreras. She returned the smile with one that was equally surface level. I've heard a lot about you. Have you? Something flickered in Sloane's expression. From Caleb, from various sources. Josie kept her voice light. You're quite well known in sustainability circles. As are you, apparently. Sloane's gaze sharpened. I was just telling someone that Caleb seems to have found himself a new consultant. How exciting. The emphasis on the word was deliberate, the implication clear. Josie felt her spine straighten. Meridian is doing important work, she said. It's an honor to be involved. I'm sure it is. Sloane turned to Caleb. I hadn't realized you were looking for outside help. You seemed so determined to keep everything in-house. Strategy is always evolving. Caleb's voice was flat. Josie brings a perspective we've been lacking. Fresh perspectives can be so valuable. Sloane's hand landed on Caleb's other arm, proprietary, familiar. We should catch up soon, Caleb. There's so much we haven't talked about. I don't think there's anything to discuss. There's always something to discuss. Her smile was knife-sharp. Josie, it was lovely to meet you. I'm sure we'll see each other again. She walked away before Josie could respond, her silver dress catching the light as she went. The group had fallen silent. Senator Morrison was suddenly very interested in his drink. Rebecca Park was studying something on her phone. The tension hung in the air like humidity. Josie became aware that her hand was gripping Caleb's arm hard enough to leave marks. Sorry, she muttered, loosening her hold. Don't be. His voice was low, meant only for her. You did perfectly. That was perfectly. You didn't let her intimidate you. You held your ground. You redirected without engaging. His eyes met hers. Better than perfectly. Josie felt warmth spread through her chest, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. She's going to be a problem, isn't she? She's going to try to be. He paused, but I think she just met her match. Before Josie could respond, Rebecca Park stepped forward. Miss Contreras, Josie. I meant what I said earlier. I'd love to discuss some opportunities. Would you be open to a coffee meeting next week? Yes. Josie blinked. Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Rebecca handed over a business card. Monday work for you. Monday works. And just like that, for the first time in 6 months, Josie had a meeting. A real meeting. With a real company. About real work. She looked at Caleb. He was watching her with something that might have been satisfaction, or might have been something else entirely. Ready for that dance? He asked. Josie slipped Rebecca's card into her borrowed clutch. I think I am. The dance floor was half full. Couples swaying to something slow and jazzy, the kind of music that encouraged closeness without demanding it. Caleb led Josie to the edge of the crowd and turned to face her. I should warn you, she said. I haven't danced in years. I should warn you, neither have I. Great. We'll embarrass ourselves together. That's generally my preference. He held out his hand and she took it. His other hand came to rest on her waist, light, respectful, leaving her room to adjust if she needed to. She placed her free hand on his shoulder and tried to remember how this worked. They were awkward at first, steps that didn't quite sync, a near collision with another couple that made Josie laugh despite herself. Caleb led with the kind of careful concentration usually reserved for surgery, which only made her laugh harder. Are you always this graceful? She asked. Only when I'm trying to impress someone. Is this you trying? This is me failing spectacularly. But he was smiling as he said it. The people watching can't tell the difference, though. Josie glanced around. He was right, they were being watched. Subtle glances from across the room. Phones held at angles that might have been casual, or might have been recording. The journalist from earlier making notes. We're being observed, she murmured. That's the point. His hand shifted slightly on her waist, steadying her as they found something resembling a rhythm. How are you feeling? Terrified, exhilarated, like I might throw up. Charming combination. You asked. They turned, and Josie caught sight of Sloane across the room, watching them with an expression that could have frozen glass. Their eyes met for a moment before Sloane looked away. She really doesn't like this, Josie said. No, she doesn't. Is it wrong that I find that satisfying? Caleb's lips twitched. Probably, but I won't tell anyone. The song shifted into something slower, and somehow they adjusted without discussing it. Josie found herself closer to him, her hand sliding from his shoulder to the back of his neck. His fingers spread across her lower back, warm through the thin fabric of her dress. This felt different now, less like performance, more like something else. Can I ask you something? Josie said. You keep asking that before you ask things. It's called courtesy. It's called stalling. But go ahead. She took a breath. What happened? With you and Sloane. The real story. Caleb was quiet for a moment. The music played. Other couples moved around them. Josie began to think she'd overstepped. Then he spoke. We dated for 2 years. I proposed 8 months before the government contract came through. She said yes. His voice was flat, reciting facts. 3 months into the engagement, she started pushing for more visibility. More events, more interviews, more Instagram posts. She wanted us to be a brand. And you didn't. I wanted to run my company and come home to someone who saw me as more than a headline. He paused. She said I was being naive. That success at this level required constant performance. That I needed to choose between privacy and power. So she gave you an ultimatum. She gave me a choice. I chose wrong in her opinion. His jaw tightened. She announced the breakup before I could. Controlled the narrative. Made it sound like I'd been emotionally unavailable. Too focused on work. Unwilling to commit. The kind of story that writes itself. And now she wants back in. Because the contract changes things. The contract makes me valuable again. Or at least, valuable in a way she can use. Caleb's eyes met hers. I'm telling you this so you understand what you've walked into. Sloane doesn't give up easily. Tonight might have surprised her, but it won't stop her. Josie processed this. Why don't you just tell the truth? Go to the press, give your side of the story. Because my side sounds like a powerful man complaining about his beautiful ex-girlfriend. Because any story I tell becomes ammunition for her narrative. Because the people who matter, the senators, the board members, don't care about the truth. They care about stability, control, the appearance of someone who has their personal life handled. So you're just stuck. I was stuck. His hand flexed against her back. Tonight, for the first time, I feel like maybe I'm not. The music began to fade. The dance was ending, but neither of them moved to separate. Josie, Caleb's voice was low. I know this started as a transaction, but I want you to know, whatever happens after tonight, whatever you decide, I'm grateful. For this. For you. Josie felt something flutter in her chest. We barely know each other. I know. His eyes held hers. And yet, the song ended. They stood there for a moment longer, frozen in something that felt too real to be fake. Then Josie stepped back and the spell broke. You promised me introductions, she said, her voice slightly unsteady. And real food. I'm holding you to both. Caleb's expression shifted back to something more professional, but his eyes were warm. Then let's get to work. The terrace was cool and quiet, a stark contrast to the buzzing energy inside. Josie had escaped there after an hour of introductions that had left her head spinning. Names, faces, business cards accumulating in her clutch like paper confetti. Rebecca Park, who wanted to talk branding. Tom Chen, who was looking for a communication strategist for a new environmental initiative. Diana Vega, who'd pulled her aside for a 20-minute conversation about market positioning that had ended with an exchange of phone numbers and a promise to continue this soon. It was overwhelming. All of it, the attention, the opportunity, the constant performance of being someone worth paying attention to. She needed air. She needed 5 minutes to process. The terrace overlooked the parking lot, hardly glamorous, but the December night was crisp and clear, and the string lights reflected off the glass railing in a way that almost made it beautiful. Josie leaned against the metal frame and breathed. What was she doing? 2 hours ago, she'd been hiding in corners, mourning her career, dreading every moment of this gala. Now she was collecting business cards from people who ran companies. Now she was being introduced as Caleb Morrow's consultant. Now she was pretending. No, not even pretending, just being someone who mattered. It was too fast. Too much. Too good to be true. Taking a break from your performance. Josie turned. Sloane Ashford stood in the doorway, her silver dress catching the terrace lights, her expression polite and utterly cold. Sloane. Josie kept her voice neutral. Nice night for fresh air. Is it? Sloane stepped onto the terrace, letting the door close behind her. I wouldn't know. I've been too busy watching you work the room. I wasn't working anything. No. Sloane's heels clicked against the stone as she approached. Funny, from where I was standing, it looked like a masterclass. Rebecca Park, Tom Chen, Diana Vega, all of them eating out of your hand. They were just being polite. They were being strategic. Sloane stopped a few feet away, studying Josie with the kind of attention usually reserved for enemies. Tell me, how long have you been planning this? Planning what? Your little Cinderella moment. The nobody in the borrowed dress who catches the eye of the wealthy prince. It's a classic story. I'm just curious how far in advance you scripted it. Josie felt her spine stiffen. I didn't script anything. I came here with a friend who was working the event. I didn't even know Caleb before tonight. Didn't you? Sloane smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. That's convenient. It's the truth. Truth is subjective. Sloane stepped closer, her voice dropping. Let me tell you how this works, since you're clearly new to it. Men like Caleb have women like you appearing in their lives constantly. Beautiful, ambitious, willing to do whatever it takes to climb. He's been through dozens of them. I'm not trying to climb anything. Of course you're not. Sloane's tone dripped with mockery. You're just here for the networking, the professional opportunities, the totally legitimate business discussions with a man who looks at you like you're something rare and precious. Josie's face heated. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I was engaged to him for almost a year. I know what he looks like when he's interested in someone. Sloane's eyes narrowed. And I know what happens when someone new enters his orbit. He becomes fascinated, obsessed even, for a few weeks, maybe a few months. And then he loses interest and they disappear, and he moves on to the next shiny thing. That sounds like your experience. Not mine. Something flickered in Sloane's expression. Anger, pain. It was gone before Josie could identify it. Let me make this simple, Sloane said quietly. Caleb and I have history. We have a future. Whether he realizes it yet or not, we're going to end up back together. It's inevitable. Our families, our businesses, our entire world is designed to bring us together. Then why are you out here warning me? Because I'm trying to save you the embarrassment. Sloane's voice softened, almost kind. You seem nice, Josie. Naive, but nice. And I don't want you to get hurt when you realize you were never anything more than a distraction. Josie stared at her. She thought about 6 months of rejection letters. 6 months of Marcus taking credit for her work. 6 months of being told in ways subtle and overt that she didn't matter. And then she thought about tonight. About Caleb's hand on her back, steady and sure. About Rebecca Park handing over a business card. About the way people had looked at her, not through her but at her. You're wrong, Josie said quietly. Sloane's smile faltered. Excuse me. About all of it. About me being naive. About Caleb losing interest. About your future together. Josie straightened, meeting Sloane's eyes directly. Maybe you were engaged to him. Maybe you know things I don't. But I know what I saw tonight. A man who was miserable until he found a way out. A man who's been trying to escape a story you keep writing him into. He's confused. He's not confused. He's done. Josie felt something crystallizing in her chest, sharp and clear. And maybe I'm just a distraction. Maybe this whole night is fake. But you know what? At least I didn't show up pretending to be something I'm not. At least I didn't spend months manipulating the press to trap someone who doesn't want me. Sloane's face went pale. So thank you for the warning, Josie continued, her voice steady now. But I don't think I need saving. And I think you should probably worry less about me and more about why he's going to such lengths to avoid you. Silence. Sloane stood there, frozen, her perfect composure cracking around the edges. Josie saw something flash through her eyes. Surprise, maybe, or the beginning of doubt. Then the mask slid back into place. You have no idea who you're dealing with, Sloane said softly. This isn't over. She turned and walked back inside, the door swinging shut behind her. Josie stood alone on the terrace, her heart pounding, her hands shaking. She wrapped her arms around herself and waited for the adrenaline to fade. What had she just done? The door opened again. Josie tensed, expecting Sloane to return, expecting round two. But it was Caleb who stepped onto the terrace, his expression tight with concern. I saw Sloane leave, he said. What happened? Josie laughed, slightly hysterical. She warned me away from you, told me you'd lose interest, said your relationship with her is inevitable. Caleb's jaw tightened. What did you say? I told her she was wrong. About all of it. Josie looked at him. Probably shouldn't have. But I'm not good at keeping my mouth shut when people condescend to me. For a moment, Caleb just stood there. The string lights reflected in his eyes, making them seem brighter, warmer. No, he said slowly. You're not good at that at all, are you? Is that a problem? It's the opposite of a problem. He crossed the terrace to stand beside her, looking out at the parking lot that somehow now didn't seem quite so unglamorous. I should apologize for putting you in that position. You didn't put me in anything. She followed me out here because of what we're doing, because of the impression we're creating. Josie shrugged. The impression was always going to make her angry. That was the point. The point was to protect me, not to put a target on your back. She looked at him. He looked genuinely distressed, brow furrowed, tension in his shoulders, like her safety actually mattered to him. I can handle Sloane Ashford, she said. I've handled worse. That's not the point. What is the point? Caleb turned to face her fully. In the dim light of the terrace, he seemed less like the billionaire CEO she'd seen in articles, and more like someone real. Someone tired. someone who carried too much alone. The point is that you agreed to help me for one night. You didn't agree to become a player in whatever game Sloane is running. Maybe I want to be. The words surprised her even as she said them. But they felt true. Caleb's expression shifted. What? She thinks I'm not a threat. She thinks I'm temporary, insignificant, someone who'll fade away by morning. Josie lifted her chin. I've spent 6 months being treated like I'm not worth taking seriously. And I'm tired of it. So what are you saying? I'm saying. She paused, gathering her thoughts. I'm saying maybe we don't end this tonight. Maybe we keep the impression going. Not forever, but long enough to give you space to handle the contract. Long enough to prove to Sloane that you've moved on. Long enough for her to find someone else to obsess over. Caleb stared at her. You'd do that. For the right terms. Which are real work. Not fake consulting, actual projects. Pay me market rate and give me real responsibilities. If I'm going to be associated with Meridian, I want to earn it. That can be arranged. And visibility. Professional visibility. The kind of introductions I got tonight, but more of them. Help me rebuild what I lost. Done. And she hesitated. If this goes wrong, if the press decides I'm a gold digger or an opportunist, if my reputation takes a hit because of this arrangement, you publicly correct the record. On camera, no spin. Caleb nodded slowly. You have my word. Then we have a deal. They stood there in silence for a moment, the weight of what they'd just agreed to settling over them. You're remarkable, you know that, Caleb said quietly. Josie felt her face warm. I'm desperate. There's a difference. I know the difference. This is the first one. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and sighed. The TechCrunch reporter is asking for a quote about my mystery companion, he said. I should probably give her something. Tell her we're keeping things professional, that I'm consulting on the rebrand. And if she pushes for more personal details. Josie smiled. Tell her you're hoping to work with me long term. That much is true. Caleb's answering smile made something flutter in her chest. Let's go back inside, he said. I believe I still owe you some introductions. And food. You promised food. After this. Somewhere without a single canapé in sight. Deal. They walked back into the gala together, leaving Sloane's warnings on the terrace behind them. It was nearly midnight when Caleb finally steered her toward a quiet corridor near the service entrance. The gala was winding down. Conversations had grown looser, louder. The DJ had shifted to something upbeat, and a few brave souls had started actually dancing. Most people were still networking, but the energy had shifted from performing to enjoying themselves. Josie should have been exhausted. She was exhausted. Her feet were screaming in Mina's sister-in-law's heels. Her face ached from smiling, and her brain felt like it had been run through a blender. But she also felt alive, more alive than she'd felt in months. How are you holding up? Caleb asked as they stopped near a stack of folded tables. I think I've lost sensation in both feet. That's usually a sign that the evening is going well, or that I'm developing gangrene. She leaned against the wall, taking the weight off her shoes. But other than the medical emergency, I'm okay. More than okay. You were incredible tonight. I talk to people. That's a basic human skill. You talk to people who are notoriously difficult to impress. You held your ground with Sloane. You didn't let anyone make you feel small. Caleb shook his head. That's not basic. That's extraordinary. Josie felt warmth spread through her chest. You're very complimentary for someone who just met me. I'm observant. There's a difference. She laughed despite herself. You know, you're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know. Cold. Intimidating. The kind of person who talks about EBITDA at parties and makes you feel stupid for not knowing what it means. I know what EBITDA means. Obviously. But you haven't mentioned it once. The corner of his mouth twitched. The night is young. It's actually not. It's almost tomorrow. Technicality. They stood there for a moment, the sounds of the gala filtering down the corridor like distant music. Josie was suddenly aware of how close they were, closer than strictly necessary. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, something warm and woodsy that she hadn't noticed when they were dancing. "Can I tell you something?" Caleb asked. "You keep doing that, asking permission to talk. It's called courtesy. It's called stalling." She smiled. "But go ahead." He was quiet for a beat. When he spoke, his voice was different, softer, more uncertain. "Tonight was the first time in months that I felt like myself." Josie blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he ran a hand through his hair, the first sign of nervous energy she'd seen from him. "I've spent so long managing perceptions, playing a role, being what everyone needs me to be for the contract, for the board, for the press. I'd forgotten what it felt like to just be present, to talk to someone without calculating every word. You seemed pretty calculated earlier. With Sloane, with the senator, with everyone who could affect the deal." He met her eyes. "Not with you." Josie's heart did something complicated. "Why not with me?" "I don't know. Because you weren't trying to get anything from me. Because you called me ridiculous to my face. Because when I asked you to do something insane, you didn't just say yes. You interrogated the logic until it made sense. That's just basic self-preservation. That's honesty. Real honesty." His voice dropped. "You have no idea how rare that is in my world." Josie felt something shift between them. The air felt heavier, charged with something she wasn't ready to name. "I'm not honest," she said quietly. "I'm just incapable of pretending, which isn't the same thing. I think it might be. It's not." She looked away. "Honest people choose to tell the truth. I just can't figure out how to lie convincingly. It's a deficiency, not a virtue." "Then, why did I feel like I could trust you within 5 minutes of meeting you?" "Because you were desperate and I was convenient." "No." He stepped closer. "Because when everyone else in that room was performing, you were real. You were standing in a corner, looking miserable, completely failing to pretend you belonged there. And I thought," he stopped. "What?" Josie's voice came out barely above a whisper. "What did you think?" Caleb's eyes searched her face. "I thought, there's someone who wouldn't lie to me if it mattered." Josie's throat tightened. This wasn't supposed to happen. This whole thing was supposed to be a transaction, a strategic arrangement between two people who needed something from each other. It wasn't supposed to involve late-night confessions in corridors, or the way he was looking at her like she was something precious, or the flutter in her chest that definitely shouldn't be there. "We should go back," she said, her voice unsteady. "People will notice we're gone." "Let them notice." "Caleb, I know." He took a breath. "I know this is complicated. I know we're barely more than strangers. I know that whatever this is, whatever we're pretending to be, has an expiration date. Then why does it feel like something else?" The question hung between them. Caleb's hand came up to touch her face, light, questioning. When she didn't pull away, his thumb traced along her cheekbone. "I don't know," he said quietly, "but I'd like to find out." Josie's breath caught. "This is a terrible idea." "Probably. We have a professional arrangement, a strategic partnership. If we blur those lines, I know." His hand dropped. He stepped back. "You're right. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. Don't apologize." Josie caught his hand before he could fully retreat. "I'm not saying never. I'm saying not tonight. Tonight is already too much. Too fast. I need time to figure out what's real and what's just performance." "Proximity." She squeezed his fingers. "You've been playing a role for months. I've been invisible for months. Maybe what we're feeling is just relief. Two people who finally found someone who sees them. And if it's not, if it's more than that, then we figure it out together, once we know the difference." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "We take it slow. We take it slow." "But Josie," his grip on her hand tightened. "Whatever this is, whatever it becomes, I want you to know that I see you. Really see you. Not because you're useful or strategic or convenient. Because you're you. And that's enough." Josie felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back. "That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Then the people in your life have been failing you." "Probably." She managed a watery smile. but maybe that's changing. They stood there for a moment longer, hands linked, the future stretching out before them like an unmarked map. Then Josie's phone buzzed. She pulled it out to find a text from Mina. "Where the hell are you?" "I've been looking everywhere. The keynote guy finally left and I need food." "My friend," Josie explained. "She wants to know where I am. Sounds like multiple people are expecting food from me tonight. You can afford it." Caleb laughed, a real laugh, the first one she'd heard from him. It transformed his face. "Fair point." He offered his arm. "Shall we go collect your friend and find somewhere without a canapé in sight?" Josie took his arm. "I thought you'd never ask." They found Mina near the coat check, looking frazzled but triumphant. "The electromagnetic frequency guy finally left," she announced. "Turns out, he just needed someone to validate his concerns about 5G towers. I validated the hell out of them. He's now convinced I'm his spiritual sister." "Congratulations," Josie offered. "Thank you. I deserve a medal." Mina's eyes landed on Caleb, and her expression shifted. "And who is this?" "Mina Park, Caleb Morrow." "Caleb, this is my best friend Mina. She's the one who dragged me here tonight." "Then I owe you a debt of gratitude," Caleb said, shaking Mina's hand. Mina's eyebrows climbed toward her hairline. She looked from Caleb to Josie and back again. "Okay," she said slowly. "I have questions." "Later," Josie promised. "Food first." "Food is an excellent distraction from the interrogation you clearly don't want to have." Mina grabbed her coat from the attendant. "Lead the way, Mr. Morrow." They were heading toward the exit when the TechCrunch reporter intercepted them. "Mr. Morrow, a quick word." Caleb stopped, his expression carefully neutral. "Of course." The reporter, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a digital recorder, glanced at Josie with undisguised curiosity. "Everyone's been buzzing about your companion tonight. Care to share who she is?" Josie felt Caleb's hand tighten on her back. They'd talked about this. They'd prepared. "This is Josie Contreras," he said smoothly. "She's been consulting with Meridian on our rebranding strategy. I'm hoping to bring her on in a more permanent capacity." "Professional relationship then?" "Professional, yes." Caleb paused. "And personal?" The reporter's eyes lit up. "Personal how?" This wasn't part of the script. Josie felt her heart rate spike. Caleb glanced at her, a question in his eyes. "Is this okay?" She gave a tiny nod. "Miss Contreras is the most interesting person I've met in a very long time," Caleb said, turning back to the reporter. "Our professional discussions have become something more. Beyond that, we'd like to keep things private." The reporter scribbled notes. "So the rumors about you and Sloane Ashford are exactly that." "Rumors." Caleb's voice was firm. "Sloane and I ended our engagement 8 months ago. We remain professionally cordial, but there's no personal relationship to discuss." "And Miss Contreras?" The reporter turned to Josie. "Any comment?" Josie took a breath. "I'm just grateful for the opportunity to work with Meridian. Whatever else develops, we'll see where it goes." It was vague enough to be true, specific enough to create a story. The reporter smiled, clearly satisfied. "Thank you both. I think this is going to make an interesting piece." She disappeared into the crowd, already typing on her phone. Caleb let out a breath. "Well, that's going to be everywhere by morning." "We knew it would be." "Knowing and experiencing are different things." He looked at her. "You okay?" Josie considered the question. Tomorrow, she would be Googleable. Tomorrow, her name would be linked to Caleb Morrow in articles and tweets, and whatever else the internet decided to create. Tomorrow, Sloane Ashford would see the coverage and probably escalate whatever war she was waging. But tonight she felt strong. She felt seen. She felt, for the first time in months, like she was moving forward instead of standing still. "Yeah," she said. "I'm okay." "Good." He smiled. "Let's go get that food." Josie woke to sunlight streaming through her bedroom window, and the smell of coffee she definitely hadn't made. She blinked at the ceiling, disoriented. Then the previous night came rushing back. The gala, the deal, the dance, Sloane, Caleb's hand on her face in the corridor. She lives. Mina appeared in the doorway, holding 2 mugs of coffee and wearing what appeared to be Josie's bathrobe. "Why are you in my apartment?" "Because after we got food, which, by the way, best late-night tacos of my life, I decided you shouldn't be alone when the internet explodes." Mina handed her a mug and settled onto the edge of the bed. "Which it has." Spectacularly. Josie's stomach dropped. "Show me." Mina pulled out her phone and handed it over. The first headline made Josie's eyes go wide. Tech billionaire Caleb Morrow debuts mystery woman at founder's gala. There was a photo, clearly taken without their knowledge, of the two of them dancing. Josie barely recognized herself. She looked elegant, confident, like she belonged in Caleb's arms. She scrolled. "Morrow confirms new romance. The most interesting person I've met, Sloane Ashford who." Caleb Morrow has clearly moved on Industry Insider. Says Morrow's new flame is marketing genius Josie Contra's marketing genius. Josie looked up. "Who said that?" "Rebecca Park gave a quote." "She called you." Mina leaned over to read the screen. "A brilliant strategist with an intuitive grasp of brand positioning. She's apparently very excited to work with you." Josie felt tears prick at her eyes. "That's..." "Also, you have 17 LinkedIn connection requests, 4 interview inquiries, and what appears to be a job offer from a company I've never heard of, but that seems legitimate." Mina grinned. "Welcome back to relevance, babe." Josie set down the phone, overwhelmed. "This is insane. This is what happens when you catch the eye of a billionaire." Mina's expression softened. "Real talk though, are you okay? Last night was a lot." "I think so. I'm still processing." "Fair." Mina took a sip of her coffee. "So, is it real?" "Is what real?" "You and Caleb." "Because from where I was sitting, which, to be clear, was across the table watching you two make heart eyes over tacos, it didn't look entirely fake." Josie felt her face heat. "It started as a business arrangement. And now, I don't know." She looked down at her coffee. "He's not what I expected. He's kind and honest, and he makes me feel like I'm worth listening to. But we've only known each other for 12 hours. Some of the best things happen fast. Some of the worst things do too." Mina was quiet for a moment. "You're thinking about Marcus. About what happened last time you trusted someone powerful." "Hard not to. That was different. Marcus was using you. Caleb is..." Mina hesitated. "I don't know what Caleb is, but the way he looked at you last night, that wasn't the look of someone who's using." Josie's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. "Caleb, good morning. Saw the coverage. Hope you're doing okay. Coffee later." She stared at the message. 12 hours ago, she'd been hiding in corners, convinced her life was over. Now she had a potential consulting job, multiple professional opportunities, and a text from a billionaire asking to see her again. It was too much, too fast, too everything. But when had playing it safe ever gotten her anywhere? She typed back, "You're buying. And I want real coffee, not whatever rich people think coffee is." The response came almost immediately. "I'll find somewhere that serves it in mugs, not tiny cups." That's suspiciously specific. "I've been burned before." She found herself smiling despite everything. "That face," Mina said, watching her. "That's the face of someone who's about to do something, either very smart or very stupid. Probably both." Classic Josie. Mina clinked her mug against Josie's. "Whatever happens, I'm here. And I reserve the right to say, 'I told you so' later." "You always do. It's my love language." Josie looked at her phone again. At the articles calling her interesting. At the messages from people who wanted to work with her. At Caleb's name on her screen. She had no idea what she was doing. But for the first time in 6 months, she wasn't hiding from it. The coffee shop Caleb had chosen was deliberately unremarkable. It was a small place in East Austin, the kind of establishment that had exposed brick walls and mismatched furniture, and served their drinks in ceramic mugs the size of soup bowls. The clientele was mostly students and freelancers. Nobody who would recognize Caleb Morrow or care if they did. Josie liked it immediately. Not what I expected, she said, sliding into a chair across from him. I figured you'd pick somewhere with valet parking and a wine list. I considered it. Caleb wrapped his hands around his own oversized mug. But you specified real coffee. This seemed more authentic. How do you even know about places like this? I didn't always have money. His eyes met hers. I started Meridian in a garage with a laptop and a terrible coffee maker. Places like this feel like home. Josie studied him. He looked different today. No suit, just a dark sweater and jeans. Less polished, more approachable, more like a person and less like a headline. You look tired, she said. I didn't sleep much. He smiled slightly. Lots to think about. Same. She took a sip of her coffee. It was excellent, strong and dark, exactly what she needed. So, we should probably talk about what happens now. We should. He set down his mug. The coverage is everywhere. The narrative has shifted. Sloane called my assistant 6 times this morning before finally leaving a message. What did she say? She's concerned about the speed of this development and thinks we should discuss appropriate boundaries. Caleb's voice was flat, which I translated to mean she's furious and trying to figure out how to regain control. That's about what I expected. Me too. He paused. My publicist is thrilled, by the way. Apparently mystery romance generates better press than possible reconciliation. The senator called to congratulate me on moving forward. The board sent a fruit basket. A fruit basket. They're traditional people. The corner of his mouth twitched. The point is, last night worked. Better than I'd hoped. Which means we need to decide what comes next. Josie took a breath. You mean whether we keep this going? Whether we formalize the arrangement? Define the terms. Make sure we're both protected if things get complicated. It was so Caleb. Pragmatic, strategic, thinking 3 steps ahead. Josie should probably find it off-putting. Instead, she found it oddly reassuring. Okay, she said. Terms. Let's hear them. Caleb pulled out his phone, scrolling through something. I had my lawyer draft a consulting agreement this morning. Standard terms, market rate, 6-month initial contract with option to renew. You'd be working on actual Meridian projects. The rebrand, yes, but also some strategic communications initiatives we've been developing. Actual work, not just window dressing. Actual work, with real deliverables and creative control. He looked up. You're good at what you do, Josie. I want to benefit from that, not just have you stand next to me at parties. Josie felt warmth spread through her chest. And the personal side, the relationship we're pretending to have. That's where it gets complicated. He set down the phone. Last night you said we should take things slow. Figure out what's real versus what's proximity. I remember. I think that's wise. But the press isn't going to wait for us to figure ourselves out. There will be more events, more photos, more questions about where this is going. He hesitated. We can handle it however you want. Confirm the relationship, keep it vague, deny everything. It's your call. My call. Your reputation is the one at risk here. If people decide you're just another gold digger, another woman climbing on my coattails, that hurts you more than it hurts me. Josie appreciated that he recognized it, appreciated that he wasn't trying to control the narrative without her input. What do you want? She asked. Honestly, Caleb was quiet for a moment. Honestly, I want to keep seeing you. Not for the press, not for Sloane, not for any strategic reason. Just because I like talking to you. Because last night was the most alive I've felt in months. Because when you're around, I feel like I can breathe. Josie's heart did something complicated. That's a lot of pressure, she said softly. I know. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. She reached across the table, touching his hand. I feel it too. Whatever this is. I'm just scared of what happens if we rush it. If we build something on the foundation of a lie, and then the lie falls apart. So we don't build on the lie. Caleb turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers. We build on the truth. We're 2 people who met by accident, discovered they worked well together, and decided to see where it goes. The professional partnership is real. The connection is real. Everything else is just timing. Timing. We're not pretending to have feelings we don't have. We're just accelerating the visibility of feelings we're developing. That's a very business way of describing a relationship. I'm a business person. It's my love language. Josie laughed despite herself. Mina says her love language is "I told you so." I like Mina. She'd like hearing that. They sat there for a moment, hands linked across the table, the noise of the coffee shop fading into background static. "Okay," Josie said finally. "Here's what I'm thinking. We sign the consulting agreement. Real work, real pay, real professional relationship. That part is easy." "Agreed. For the personal stuff, we keep it vague. We're seeing where things go. We're enjoying getting to know each other. We don't confirm or deny anything beyond that. And between us," Josie took a breath, "between us we take it slow. Real conversations. Real dates, not just events. Get to know each other like normal people, as much as that's possible. I can do that. And if it doesn't work out, if we realize we're better as colleagues than anything else, we have a clean exit strategy. No drama, no public breakup, just a quiet transition to amicable former partners." Caleb nodded slowly. "And if it does work out," Josie felt something flutter in her chest, "then we figure that out together. When we get there." "That sounds reasonable. I'm a reasonable person. You're an extraordinary person." He squeezed her hand. "But yes, also reasonable." They sat there for another moment, the weight of what they'd agreed to settling over them. "So," Josie said, "what now?" Caleb smiled, that real smile that transformed his face. "Now I buy you breakfast. Then I send you the consulting agreement to review. Then tonight, if you're free, I'd like to take you somewhere. An event. A date. An actual date. No press, no agenda. Just you and me." Josie felt her face warm. "I'd like that." "Good." He stood, still holding her hand. "Let me introduce you to the best breakfast tacos in Austin. Consider it a business expense. Everything is a business expense with you. Welcome to dating a CEO." She laughed and let him lead her toward the counter, their fingers intertwined. Outside, the morning sun was bright. Somewhere, the internet was buzzing with speculation about their relationship. Somewhere, Sloane Ashford was plotting her next move. But in this small coffee shop in East Austin, none of that mattered. What mattered was the warmth of his hand, the promise of breakfast tacos, the beginning of something that felt impossibly, improbably real. Caleb picked her up at 7. Josie had spent an embarrassing amount of time getting ready, changing outfits 3 times, rejecting Mina's increasingly dramatic suggestions, finally settling on a simple navy dress that made her feel like herself. "You look beautiful," Caleb said when she opened the door. "You look like you're trying to impress me." "I am trying to impress you." He was wearing dark jeans and a button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms that Josie was definitely not staring at. "Is it working?" "Maybe. I'll take maybe." He drove them to a restaurant she'd never heard of, small, intimate, tucked away in a neighborhood she'd never explored. The kind of place that didn't advertise, that you had to know about to find. "How do you know all these hidden spots?" Josie asked as they were seated at a corner table. "I spend a lot of time avoiding places where people will recognize me." He smiled. "It's made me very good at finding the obscure ones." The food was incredible. The conversation was better. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, the moments that had shaped them. Caleb told her about his father, who died when he was 15, leaving a mountain of debt that his mother had worked 3 jobs to pay off. He told her about starting Meridian in that garage, about the early failures, about the moment when everything had finally clicked. Josie told him about growing up in a border town in Texas, about being the first in her family to go to college, about the pressure and the pride, and the constant feeling of having to prove she belonged. She told him about Marcus, about the campaign, about the day she'd been escorted from the building with a cardboard box and her career in ruins. "I felt so stupid," she admitted. "I should have seen it coming. I should have protected myself." "You trusted someone." That's not stupid. It felt stupid. It felt like I'd failed some fundamental test of adulthood. You didn't fail anything. Caleb reached across the table, taking her hand. You were betrayed. There's a difference. Josie felt tears prick at her eyes. You're very good at this. At what? Making me feel like I'm not broken. You're not broken. His thumb traced circles on her palm. You're someone who got knocked down and is figuring out how to stand back up. That's not broken. That's human. They lingered over dessert, then coffee, neither of them wanting the evening to end. Eventually, the restaurant began to empty, and they took the hint. Caleb drove her home slowly, taking the scenic route through neighborhoods Josie had never seen. They talked more, laughed more, found themselves in silences that didn't feel awkward. When they pulled up to her apartment, neither of them moved. I had a really good time, Josie said. Me too. This felt she searched for the right word. Real, like it wasn't about the arrangement or the press or any of that. Just us. That's because it was just us. He turned to face her. Josie, I know we said slow, and I meant it, but I want you to know, this isn't a game to me. Whatever happens with Sloane, with the contract, with any of it, I want to keep seeing you. Not because it's strategic, because you make me happy. Josie's heart was doing something dangerous. I want to keep seeing you too, she said quietly. Caleb smiled soft, genuine. Then I'll call you tomorrow. Okay, okay. Neither of them moved. Then Caleb leaned in, slow enough to give her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was gentle, brief, a question more than a statement. When they pulled apart, Josie found herself smiling. That was nice, she said. Just nice. Really nice. I'll take really nice. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Good night, Josie. Good night, Caleb. She got out of the car and walked to her door, turning back once to wave. He waited until she was inside before driving away. Josie leaned against her closed door, heart racing. This was real. Whatever was happening between them, it was real. And for the first time in 6 months, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was ready to write it. 1 week later, the flash of cameras was blinding, but this time, Josie didn't blink. She stood to the side of the podium in the Department of Transportation's briefing room, checking the live stream metrics on her tablet. Viewership was up 40%. Sentiment was overwhelmingly positive. On stage, Caleb signed the final page of the Meridian contract, the $2.3 billion stack of paper that represented his life's work. He capped his pen, stood up and shook Senator Morrison's hand. The room erupted in applause. In the front row, Sloane Ashford clapped. Her smile was perfect, practiced, and tight as a drum. She looked at Caleb, waiting for him to glance her way, waiting for that moment of acknowledgement she felt she was owed. It never came. Caleb didn't look at the senator, or the cameras, or his ex-fiancée. He looked past them all, scanning the wings until his eyes locked on Josie. He gave her a tiny nod, a gesture so subtle the cameras missed it, but Josie caught it loud and clear. We did it. Impressive turnout, a voice said beside her. Josie turned to see Rebecca Park. The narrative held, Josie said, showing her the data. Focus is entirely on the stability of the leadership and the innovation of the tech. No personal drama, just success. You're good at this, Contreras. I'm learning. The ceremony broke up. Reporters surged forward, but Caleb moved through them with a new kind of ease, ignoring the shouted questions until he reached the side of the stage. He stopped in front of her. Miss Contreras, he said, loud enough for the nearest reporters to hear. I believe we have a strategy meeting. We do, Josie said professionally, although I believe the agenda includes lunch. Real food. Mandatory. Out of the corner of her eye, Josie saw Sloane turn and walk away, her silver heels clicking against the marble floor, finally realizing she was no longer part of the story. Caleb offered his arm. He didn't check with his publicist. He didn't look at the cameras. He just waited. Josie tucked her tablet under one arm and took his hand with the other. Lead the way, Mr. Morrow, she said. And in front of the flashing lights, the senators and the entire tech world, They walked out together, not as a narrative, not as a strategy, but as something real.